Good evening. I'd like to call the January 22nd Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Markey, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dodson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mr. Galucci? Mrs. Galucci, I'm so sorry.
Present.
I'm so sorry. I said Mr. Mr. Schlag
Present.
and Mrs. Collins.
Present.
5 present.
Okay, there is a quorum. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Dodson, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Whenever we have a new officer to swear in, we usually go out of order. So, Ms. Marco, would you please read our first resolution, which is resolution number 69 of the year 2025.
To appoint a police officer.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes, and our deputy chief will have the honor of swearing him in.
Thank you. Officer Paskovich is joining us from the Saratoga County Sheriff's Office. He is a lifelong resident of Rotterdam, Shellmont graduate, and a graduate of the Zone 5 Regional Law Enforcement Training Academy. Kevin, do you want to come up? Raise your right hand. Put your left hand on the Bible. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Kevin Paskovich,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
that I will faithfully discharge the duty of police officer
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
We also have a presentation to do tonight, but before that, there is another resolution that we're going to pass, and I think you'll see why. Ms. Marco, would you please read Resolution 82 of the year 2025?
To rename the town park currently known as Boxwood Park to the Rosalind Warlick Town Park. Oh my God. I feel like crying. She's such a good person.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next, I'd like the family, I've known Rosalind since there was a Woolworth in town. We worked there part-time together, and then a couple of years we shared over at the senior center. So, yeah, it's a little. But anyway, with the family of Rosalind, come up. For everybody, this is his son Sean, and his son Joe, and Joe's lovely wife Stephanie, and Sean's lovely wife Tanya, and Emily, who I haven't seen since she was. And,
She hasn't grown that much.
and then we have Paige and Donald. This is a proclamation for Rotterdam's outstanding citizen, Rosalind Warlick. Whereas the town of Rotterdam and its citizens desire to recognize distinguished citizens within our town, and whereas Rosalind Warlick was born and raised in Schenectady, New York, to the late Anthony and Jean Pompilio on January 8, 1942, and whereas Rosalind graduated from the former Mount Pleasant High School, class of 1960, attended Bryant College in Rhode Island, and then worked for the Department of Transportation for New York State for many years. And whereas Rosalind's community contributions were widespread and far-reaching, having served on the Rotterdam Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee as vice chair from 2002 until her passing on October 27, 2024, volunteering countless hours cleaning town parks, cemeteries, and roadways, as well as championing and leading the annual Canal Clean Sweep at the Kiwanis Boat Launch. And whereas one of Rosalind's proudest accomplishments was being a founding member of the Highbridge Civic Association, serving as president and editor of their monthly newsletter, the Highbridge Highlights. Now therefore, I, Molly A. Collins, supervisor of the town of Rotterdam, on behalf of the town board, town administration, and the citizens of the town of Rotterdam, do hereby honor the life of Rosalind Warlick for being an outstanding citizen of the town of Rotterdam, and extend this proclamation of recognition to her loving family for her strong work ethic and dedication to the town that has always been one of integrity and grace. You guys have a lot to be proud of. Your mom is. Okay, we'll now open privilege of the floor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Brenda Terosian?
Brenda, Mr. Dobson, as you requested, I should learn a little bit more about government. January 6th, I had the privilege of going to the Schenectady Police Department and watching one of your members be arraigned. So that was interesting. The thing I'm going to ask, Mr. Mastriani, when are you going to be resigning? You shouldn't be on the board anymore. You need to resign. And the main thing I want to ask is, and I know I won't get an answer until later. The committee to examine the supervisor's position. Now, I don't know who recommends who comes on this committee for figuring out should we be full-time, should we do exactly what it is now? But the names that are on the committee are kind of top-heavy with businesses and individuals who have an interest in the board to be, Molly's to be full-time. Mr. Slag, you introduced this, and you said, but I don't want it. Then why would you introduce it? Why isn't there any citizen of Rotterdam on this committee? So this is a biased committee. It's a very top-heavy committee with businesses, realtors. There's not a single person from Rotterdam who has no interest in what town board does other than we pay our taxes. So I'm just wondering, why isn't an ordinary citizen on this board? I don't understand. Again, I'll say it again, this is a rent-to-dig town. We don't need a full-time supervisor. And I don't understand why you don't have ordinary citizens on this board. I don't know who does this committee. I don't know how this committee was set up. But there's not a regular person on this board. Not one. Just wondering. And the other thing is about the condos over on Highbridge and Peter. Read the article, and the lawyer's not here. but he said that the condos are geared towards the younger population and senior citizens. And to have a condo, 300,000 plus, because nobody included the maintenance fee that you will pay every single month. I'd like to know where you guys think there's senior citizens out there that can mortgage 300,000. Seniors and young kids, you want to bring them in. I'm sure a married couple would like a backyard for their kids. You don't get that in this condo facility. Plus, I go down High Bridge Road. I go down there all the time for work. You got one red light, gets red, and then 2 seconds later it's green, and then you got cars speeding. I don't understand. I know this is a money-making proposition, and this builder, all he's interested in is making money for themselves. They're not interested in us. They're not interested in the town. You put this up, or you guys say, yeah, go ahead, do it. You're changing the whole outlook of High Bridge Road. I mean, you already got your way once by bringing the over at Rotterdam Community Center. There would be affordable housing, but this board decided, we're not going to do that. You don't have to use your gavel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it.
With that, we'll close the privilege of the floor and we'll move on to resolution. Excuse me. Our first resolution for this evening is Resolution 68 of the year 2025. The clerk will read.
Accepting town board meeting minutes.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
By Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Abstain.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 abstention.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 69, we did 69 already. That was swearing in our police officer. So we'll go to Resolution 70 of the year 2025. Clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Train US Inc. for Town Hall VAC box retro commissioning services.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 71 of the year 2025. Clerk will read.
To accept bid and award contract with addendum for chlorine gas to JCI Jones Chemical.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 72 of the year 2025. Clerk will read.
To accept bid and award contract for sodium hexametaphosphate to Claris LLC.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 73 of the year 2025. The clerk will read.
To declare police department modems obsolete.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Schwab. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 74 of the year 2025. The clerk will read.
To declare police department radios obsolete.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 75 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To adopt a seeker negative declaration on a change of zone application on a plus or minus 1.82 acre parcel from agricultural A1 to two-family residential R2 located along 400 Road and the terminus of Valentine Drive.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dobson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 76 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To enact local law number 1 of 2025 to amend chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone and a plus or minus 1.82 acre parcel from agricultural A1 to two-family residential R2 located along 400 Road and the terminus of Valentine Drive.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 77 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To adopt a secret negative declaration on a change of zone application on a plus or minus 3.07 acres from agricultural A1 to general business B2 located along Old Marigo Road.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 78 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To enact local law number 2 of 2025 to amend chapter 270 zoning of the town code relating to a change of zone on a plus or minus 3.07 acres from agricultural A1 to general business B2 located along Old Marigo Road.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 79 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To amend the schedule of fees.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 80 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To appoint Angelina Roberti to the position of Deputy Court Clerk.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schlag. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 81 of the year 2025, the clerk will read.
To authorize the town supervisor to execute the memorandum of agreement between the town of Rotterdam and the Civil Service Employees Association recognizing the new job title of Automotive Mechanic Helper.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 82, we already did at the beginning of the meeting. So that concludes our resolutions for this evening. We will now move on to liaison reports. Do any of the board members wish to say anything under liaison?
Holly, I have a few things. As far as the Energy Committee goes, we're going to add 2 meetings in this month because we're working battery storage. They're doing a great job. So we will meet on January 27th and also on January 30th. The committee's working with all key stakeholders. So as we're developing this code, we're sending it out to the board members, to the planning team, and anybody else that we feel would have a stake in this. The public is more than welcome to attend these meetings with us. As many of you may have heard, there have been, battery fires, and there was a proposal for a battery near a school here in Rotterdam. So it's very important to this committee. It is made of all residents, and Joe and I are very fortunate to be the board liaisons, but as we listen to them, just discuss the challenges before us, and, just as the political environment is changing and how we need to change as a community to protect residents or to benefit businesses that may be coming in. They're doing a great job being just very reasonable with thought and incorporating everybody's viewpoint. So I give them a lot of credit. So we did send a draft out to the board members and the planning team, and so we're waiting for some responses. Our plan is to put information together so that they can come to a future board meeting and just really teach everyone about what we've discovered as we've moved forward with this. So we do have a fireman. We have a couple firemen on the committee, and just in general as we're putting our thoughts together, I think it would really benefit all of you to attend something where you can learn what this team has learned. So I'm looking forward to that. As far as the Conservation Committee, they have been extremely busy, and again are made up of many residents who are doing a great job. But we have someone named Bruce on the team who's worked really hard on our natural resource inventory. That is something that a lot of adjoining towns already have, and this will really help us as we move forward when we think about development and how we're going to look at parks and just in general our land. We don't have anything right now that lays out where our natural resources are, so we're missing that. So that was passed by the board. We're working very hard on it. And then we have a meeting with Hudsonia on February 10th at 6:30. Again, the public is always welcome to attend. And we're pretty excited about that. So they're a company that's going to come in and help us develop this. And so again, if you would like to come, we would love to have you. There are 2 openings on this committee. I think the whole board received a letter of someone who had an interest in joining. We've had a few residents that are joining, and we're just trying to figure out if this is something that they want to be a part of. But anybody can come and participate. We have a few people on this committee that have been coming for a very long time, and they have such knowledge and experience, and we love having them. So we're looking at developing some programs throughout the year, some involving trees. I'm going to spend some time with different entities, maybe up in Saratoga. So I'm devoting large portions of my day to just learning about what's available out there. The other thing we're in desperate need of is anybody who has grant writing experience, because as we move forward with parks or conservation, business, economic development, anything like that, what we're missing here is we do have someone on staff who helps with grants, but we don't have dedicated folks, and we're missing out on that because it doesn't allow us to grab the money that's available. We just don't have the help. So if you know of anybody who might be interested in helping, we would love to talk to them and get them involved. So, and that's all I have, Molly.
Thank you, Mrs. Schoolchief. Is there any other board member that has anything they want to say on the liaison?
Yes, Molly. Again, I reach out on behalf of the town regarding the lead line service inventory. We continue to plug away in it. I give kudos to Rotterdam Junction. They're about 20% of sending in their surveys. They continue to do a good job down there. It's not going to go away, so any help that you guys can provide us by filling out your surveys would be truly appreciated. We also have our consultant out with 2 of their representatives and 1 town employee. all which have identification on them. They're not coming to your house to look at assessments. They're truly there just to help you, really, with lead line service inventory. You can call the town, make an appointment, and we'll send someone out there to make it easy for you. Whatever you can do to help us complete this task. This task could be completed in a year or it could take 5 years. From taxpayers' money, boy, it would be nice if we could complete it earlier. So anything you can do to help us out would be truly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, and that data helps us get funding, grant funding, down the road when those lead lines need to be replaced. So you're helping yourself, you're helping our taxes. So if you haven't gotten it done, please get it done.
Anyone?
I just wanted to thank Roz's family for coming. I was on the committee with her for a year, and then as the liaison working with the committee, and Andrea Capola is here, and Yvonne Cleveland is also here, and I just wanted to thank them as well for being here. They're on the committee, they were on with Roz as well, and there's big shoes to fill with Roz. She was a big, larger-than-life person, and there'll be an unveiling of a sign in the spring when the weather breaks, so we'll make a big deal about that as well. So thanks so much, and she was something else, man, I'll tell you. Very headstrong, but yeah, she did a great job of whatever she did. So.
Can I say a few things?
I just want to say to you guys that your mother was, I kind of got choked up, but she was just so special. I really think the world of her, and always would go over, and she always had problems with the computer, which I'm not the best of the best, but I mean, we always figured it out. But honest to God, she's really, really going to be missed, because like they all said, she's done so much for the town, and I do miss it.
And she loved that park. She would always talk about that park, and one time we're sitting in meetings, she goes, we should really have some new swings over there at that park at Boxwood. And I'm like, we got to figure out this year, you guys, how to make some new swings for Roz along with the sign. So let's get going on that and get her some new swings for over there so she can look down and see those new swings. So she was great.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to add too, she had a tremendous presence, and to her, nothing was impossible. I mean, I've been liaison with the Parks Committee for 3 years. We've had a lot of different people throughout that time, but she's been there from the beginning, and her spirit is still there. And she's missed, and she had a tremendous presence, and now that will be always remembered in the High Bridge community in Warlick Park.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Any board members under miscellaneous?
Yeah, I do. So Brenda, actually 4 of the members on the committee for full-time supervisor are Rotterdam residents. I believe John DeGiorgio was a Rotterdam resident for years. He worked for the town for many, many years. Bobby Malozzi, who owns Villa Italia, lives in Rotterdam Junction. Bruce Bonnequist is a Rotterdam resident. Matt Tiscione is a Rotterdam resident. And Megan Griffin is a Rotterdam resident. So they are residents of the town. The only business owner I know of is Bobby Malozzi, owns Villa Italia. And again, we bring this forward to investigate, and that's what their job is. And if they say we don't need a full-time supervisor, well then we don't. But I do promise you, I don't want to be supervisor full-time or part-time. So I only brought it forward to investigate it. And we're about the same size as Gilderland, so population-wise, and some of the towns that do have full-time supervisors, even some of the smaller towns have full-time supervisors. So it's to investigate, and if the investigation and the recommendation is not to move to a full-time supervisor, then that's what we abide by.
I'd like to add too, it's an advisory committee, and the town board would ultimately make any changes that committee would recommend, such as the length of the supervisor term or the salary. Every year we do a budget. We budget for our town board salaries and for the supervisor salary, and we task this committee with getting the conversation going, but it doesn't have to be limited to the committee itself. Conversation is town-wide for all of us to have about what we think. My opinions personally are, if we invested in the salary of a town supervisor, we'd have a lot of people clamoring to do the job. And we have a lot of talented people that would want to step up and operate a $30 million budget, a town apparatus of 11 different police, 30,000 residents. It's a tremendous job, and it deserves to be compensated accordingly if we want the town to run and function properly. And we're very fortunate to have the supervisor that we have, to have the deputy supervisor that we have, that work tirelessly without any appreciation, with more criticism than they deserve, but are dedicated to the day in and day out operation of a major operation. There's fires that need to be put out every single day, and they're there to do that. So we put a committee together to get the conversation going, but the conversation isn't limited to just the people on the committee. Anybody has any opinion, that's what we're here for, to have that discussion, to hear what your thoughts are and to see what you believe. So
I will tell you, I think I was the only dissenting vote about having the committee to change things. But my pick, I mean, it passed, so we each chose someone to be on the committee. The reason that I chose Mr. DiGiorgio is very simple. Not only had he worked for the town for a long time, he was also a long-time resident. It was only within those last couple of years that he moved into the city of Schenectady down at the harbors. But Mr. DiGiorgio was the deputy supervisor of the town during, I think it was Supervisor Signor's reign, or his election, his term, wow. And so I chose him because he was in charge of the senior center, parks and recreation, buildings and grounds. So I felt that with his experience, having worked in those departments, or was the head of those departments, and also having been the deputy supervisor as a department head, he could tell them what it was like. He was also hired enough years ago that we had a separate, what do you call it, a deputy supervisor that wasn't on the board and that got paid a salary. I think Ms. Marco gave me the information, and I will turn that over to the committee. So that was the reason why I chose him. It wasn't because he was a real estate or didn't live in Rotterdam, even though he grew up here and he only moved out the last couple of years. It was because of his experience. So I figured he would be able, along with Ms. Griffin. I mean, she works in my office. She's been there for 3 years, going on 4. She knows what comes through the supervisor's office. So with the other members of the committee not having worked for the town, I thought that those were 2 people that could really give them the information of how the office really works. Okay.
And I just wanted to add, I chose Bruce because he has been involved in so much with the town. I did not know him before, I was the liaison for committees, but he impresses me every single time we're together. He digs into every detail. He analyzes everything. He has a great background. He worked for BOCES for years. He was just he's my number 1 pick for a lot of things. I will tell you, as we move forward, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's always available. And he is a resident. And so, that was my feeling when I had a choice to pick someone. He can do the job of 10 people. He's amazing. So I am really looking forward. When we approved this, we approved for this committee to just do an analysis. And that's what happens in business. It's very difficult for this board. There are laws in place that say that, only so many of us can meet at one time. It makes it very, very difficult. I understand the law, but maybe the public doesn't so much. They don't understand that we can't just get in a room like we would in the public sector and just have a topic and nail out a solution. So these committees really afford us the ability for them to meet as residents and advise, and it can move much quicker. So it's actually a very powerful force for any town to use. So I feel blessed that we have people who will step up and get the job done and just advise us. And if we as a community do not agree with it after we hear all the details, then so be it. But not looking at this is a disservice. And I will say I'm very involved with outside entities. So as we meet with Association of Towns, it's a huge topic. Towns cannot find people who even want to run for supervisor. there's so much work involved, and I can tell you even personally, I am putting in so many hours every week just doing our work to make this community successful. And that's me personally. I see other board members doing the same thing. So we're trying really hard to do some good work for our communities because we love our community. So, you know, we want to look at everything and do the best job possible because, you know, we're lucky that Molly puts in so many hours, but, you know, it is a full-time job, and I'm really, really anxious to see, you know, what the determination is from this committee. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to at least do an analysis.
Anyone else? Okay. This concludes our business for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. All in favor?
Aye.